Hello and welcome to another episode of B-Movie Enema the series. I'm B-Movie proctologist Jeff Arbuckle. With me as always is my trusty partner, Nurse Disembodied. Nurse, how's it hanging?
Low and loose and full of juice. How's it going with you?
Why, swell. Thanks for asking. So, if you haven't joined us for the last couple of episodes, the great B-Movie poop chute is malfunctioning. It seems to be turning into a portal or something. That means last week a pack of zombies almost came through, I guess. But we still get to watch Let Sleeping Corpses live. So, that's not the worst thing that could have ever happened. Nurse Disembodied put her carpentry skills to good use and built a zombie-proof door.
Proving once again that I'm not just a pretty face.
That's right. Now, for the last several days, I've had pretty much no activity at the door, so I can only imagine that the zombies just decided, I don't know, to give up and go back home. So, maybe I should check and see what's going on behind the poop chute's door. Alright, now let's see what we got going on down here. Holy crap.
Oh no, what's wrong? What's down there?
Snake. Big snake.
Ugh!
Well, you know, if there's anything good to report, at least the little bugger brought us this week's movie.
Oh, good. What is it?
Jaws of Satan from 1982.
Ooh, spooky. I love a good possession movie, like The Exorcist.
Ooh, it's not one of those types of movies.
Oh, well, Jaws of Satan. Is it a shark movie?
Yeah, not quite.
Well, this is confusing.
Yep, but it was brought to us by a snake, because Jaws of Satan is about a Satan-possessed king cobra.
Go on.
See, I knew you'd come back around. Jaws of Satan has a preacher fighting Satan in the form of a king cobra.
The plot is sounding better and better each time you add more to it.
But wait, there's more.
No way.
Wait, so this Satan cobra?
Yeah?
Well, he begins influencing other snakes in the area where the preacher is.
No freaking way.
Well, yeah.
Snakes talk to each other?
Satan cobras do.
Doc, have I ever told you how much I appreciate you giving me this job?
Hey, it was the least that I could do, but picture all of these snakes hanging out and talking to each other, and then a big snake comes along and says, "Yo, I'm Satan. Want to be my followers?" And then those snakes think it over for a second, and then they say, "Shit, yeah, Satan." Now, I really do love the prospect of this. I certainly hope that this is what writer Jerry Holland and director Bob Claver had in mind when they made this movie. And there's a real possibility this movie is one of those fabled cursed movies of Hollywood. Jerry Holland wrote only one screenplay, Jaws of Satan. The guy who came up with the story for this movie has only one credit, Jaws of Satan. I mean, this could mean that this is a very bad movie, Nurse.
I refuse to believe that. Not with a little Satanist congregation of snakes.
Well, I certainly hope this doesn't portend a terrible outcome. Now, Bob Claver, our director, has had a much more extensive career as a director. However, he entirely worked on TV. A lot of episodes of series like Charles in Charge, Small Wonder, Mork and Mindy, The Facts of Life, The Partridge Family, and Welcome Back, Kotter litter Claver's directing filmography. And he made some TV movies here and there too, but Jaws of Satan is his only credited feature film. And I absolutely cannot say there have been many movies that get a major mainstream release with a trio of first-timers like this. And I also suspect that we'll see why in time. This movie's title was originally King Cobra, and from this poster, it looked a little more like a classic monster movie of sorts, with the artwork and what have you. But however, I think things got a little mucked up in the marketing. You see, in 1975, a little movie called Jaws splashed across the big screen, creating what we would refer to as the blockbuster. Its impact on film should not be taken lightly. It more or less created what would be a huge thing ever since, the concept of the summer movie season. That's when you pack theaters with action flicks and comedies and more lighthearted fare. Despite this being a whole 7 years later, Jaws' impact was still being felt by way of sequels and other nature gone killer movies, so Jaws made it to the title. And another movie that was released 9 years before Jaws of Satan that had all sorts of attention paid to it, was The Exorcist. And that movie was massively influential for years to come. In fact, by the end of the 70s and start of the 80s, Satanic Panic was a craze sweeping God-fearing regions of the United States and Great Britain. Movies about ghosts, possessed people or objects or places, and a little more spiritual style horror became as popular as the slasher flicks of the entirety of the 80s. So Satan made it to the title too. And I do have to wonder though, was Jaws of Satan recut or rewritten during the film? Because this was also the era of unexplained intelligence in creatures to rise up and fight back against humanity. Was this originally intended to be a snake revolution type of film, but it just wasn't working, so they had to bring in the whole possession angle? Or did everyone throw darts at a wall full of spitballed ideas that they decided the snake should be demon possessed?
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to find out what this goofball movie has in store for us.
Well, I best do what the lady says. We're going to get the movie started, and we'll come back after the first segment. Alright, so we're off and running here with a movie that will ultimately disappoint us.
Yeah, but gosh, you gotta love that setup. A Satan-possessed snake starts manipulating other snakes. How could this go wrong?
Oh man, this is going to go wrong in many ways, Nurse. Now, my intrepid partner, Nurse Disembody, is correct. This is a movie that seems to kind of hit the ground running. We have a train where the snake busts his way out of its own crate and is able to force a guy to fall out of the train. He opens a door by itself. He forces a dog to attack a guy, and then he sneaks up on that guy and kills him. He even stops the train.
That is one very cool snake.
Yeah, it is, but we don't really have any kind of setup for why the snake is doing what he's doing. Sure, he's slithering here, there, and everywhere, but why? Where does he come from? Why this snake? Has Satan always just hung out as this specific snake? Then how did he get caught? Did he purposely get caught? What gives, movie? Why and what are you, snake? But I digress, though. There are a handful of folks to talk about in this movie, and I think we should probably start right here with some of the supporting cast first. Fritz Weaver plays Father Tom Farrow in this movie. Now, Weaver had a pretty extensive acting career on both TV and film. He appeared in a couple of episodes of The Twilight Zone. He also made the rounds of several popular 60s and 70s TV shows such as The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Rawhide, The Fugitive, Gunsmoke, The Invaders, The Big Valley, Cannon, Night Gallery, and Mission Impossible. Look, the dude was in a lot of TV during those decades. More recently, though, he appeared in The X-Files, multiple episodes of Law and Order, and he appeared in, what else? Star Trek, in the second season episode of Deep Space Nine.
Always comes back to Star Trek.
Shit, yeah, when it comes to TV and theatrical movies, he has some decent credits here. Weaver had a role in the Dustin Hoffman thriller Marathon Man, Black Sunday, about a terrorist attack at the Super Bowl game that was actually filmed during Super Bowl X between the Steelers and the Cowboys. He was also in the Martian Chronicles Creep Show and the Thomas Crown Affair. And a few years before this movie, he also appeared as a Julie Christie's on-screen husband in the science fiction horror film Demon Seed, the poster of which has what appears to be a naked Julie Christie lying on her back, head towards us, and the words, "Julie Christie carries the demon seed," in the shadows caused by her hair. And that's in some in-your fucking face marketing, if you ask me. But for real, it's about Fritz Weaver creating a supercomputer that becomes sentient and kidnaps and impregnates his wife. So take that, Titan. Demon Seed had bonkers pregnancies first.
Didn't it seem like Father Tom was pretty chill as a priest in this town? I mean, there's a literal witch that he's pretty friendly with.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Evelyn Downs is the name of that witch in this movie, and she's played by Diana Douglas. Now, she had a 65-year acting career and was almost 40 years deep in that career at the time of this movie's release. Throughout the 70s, she had guest spots on many of the same TV shows that Weaver was in. Her likely most recognizable film on her resume was 1987's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And while I don't necessarily recognize her for her work in the 40s and 50s like others might, I can say that she has a very interesting role in this movie. And speaking of this movie takes place in Alabama. To be exact, it's Utah, Alabama. And Nurse, how would you spell Utah?
U-T-A-H.
Silly goose. In Alabama, it is E-U-T-A-W. Now look, I don't want to be a dick to Alabama, but frankly, come on, guys. I would think that Utah should be spelled like the state, but the fuck do I know? Anyway, Utah, a town that, as of the 1980 census, has a population of less than 2,500 people, is apparently big enough to have a witch, a Catholic priest, in a state, mind you, that is predominantly Southern Baptist, and a full-on county hospital. I don't even have that much stuff in my town that has 6 times that many people today. But yes, I know that Utah does have a convent there for nuns, but that does not necessarily mean that it is a Catholic town with a priest hobnobbing with people at dinner parties. Oh, and I should also mention that everyone in this town is whiter than your mama's bleached sheets. Utah is a predominantly black town. Granted, that's in today's number, but I would imagine that when the 2000 census said that 66% of the folks living there were black, it was probably at least 50% black in 1980. Utah may have been the primary setting, and several Alabama towns and cities served as shooting locations, but I'm going to guess that it's pretty hard to believe that this small town in the Southern Baptist area of the country would have enough room for the witch, the priest, and this hospital, not to mention all the snakes. I don't know.
Seems a bit fishy if you ask me.
Boy, you said it. One last person I do want to talk about in this section is little Kim Perry, played by 9-year-old Christina Applegate. We first see her at the dinner party that pretty much the entire town of Utah attended. Well, I guess except the black folks, they weren't so much invited. But anyway, she has a conversation with our witchy lady and learns about what she does as a witch. Of course, everyone would likely best know Christina Applegate as the foxy yet kind of bimbo-ish Kelly Bundy on Married with Children. That show was one of the first programs aired by the newly formed Fox network in the 80s. And was one of the longest running live-action sitcoms in TV history. Applegate was the bombshell daughter of loser shoe salesman Al Bundy. Basically, if you were a young guy, you tuned in to see what Kelly was wearing, but you stuck around for the shenanigans that Al and Peggy got up to in their train wreck of a home life. Applegate would go on to be a very well-liked actress, but never really hit it all that big in film. Sure, she had some films here and there that she would be in, but she never really had a bunch of translation from a somewhat successful and often talked about TV show to being a leading lady in a successful film career outside of supporting roles over time and here and there. But that's also not to say that she didn't get roles in decent movies like the Anchorman films. Ultimately, she would become a fairly strong figure in real life. In 2008, she was diagnosed with breast cancer in an early stage and resulted in a double mastectomy. And she also revealed just last year that she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She has also been a big supporter of several philanthropic causes. So in the end, Christina Applegate definitely was able to shake that airheaded Kelly Bundy persona and prove to be much, much more than just the pretty blonde on that one TV show. Now, before we get back to the movie, I do want to call out something more about Utah, Alabama. In the 1800s, after the Civil War, Greene County, where Utah is located, was a hotbed for some pretty bad race stuff. there was a whole bunch of intimidation of black politicians and community leaders, notably in 1870 when black politicians were killed in the county. That led to something called the Utah Massacre. 4 black deaths were reported along with 54 injuries. Most black citizens were scared into not voting in that election, helping the Democratic gubernatorial candidate win. Now, of course, back then, the Democrats were the conservative Southern Party, and the Republicans were where most black voters were, thanks to Abraham Lincoln and such. Now, that didn't tip to the polar opposites until several decades later. Now, later on, during the post-Reconstruction era, lynchings kept happening in Alabama, but none were reported in Greene County during the period. Local officials were known to run things by rule of law, and it was said that the sheriff and deputy sheriff of the county rounded up a posse and chased after a lynch mob who had captured a black resident who was accused of a crime he did not commit. And they were able to bust up that lynch mob and brought the accused man back home to Greene County. And that's kind of awesome. Later in the 20th century, one of the main architects of the civil rights movement, James Bevel, was buried in Utah in 2008. He was known for several works of civil rights protests and such, but he was the director of strategy for the Selma to Montgomery March. So how's that for some pretty cool history, nurse?
Pretty cool indeed, but we should probably get back to our movie.
Yeah, I suppose we probably should. Witchy Poo is dead, and it sure seems like these goddamn snakes are behind all this business. Now, when we come back, we'll talk about our 2 lead stars and get caught up with some of the more intricate details of this plot.
Now, I have to believe that they are using sock puppets to make the snake shadows. I giggle every time I see the shadows.
I know, it's hilarious.
Budget-efficient business happening in this movie.
Yeah, and I love how the snake would just kind of pop up. People would be, like going about their business and bam, fucking snake.
Bathtub snake is my favorite.
Yeah, you'd think that maybe finding a big-ass spider in the bathtub is bad, but imagine finding a bathtub snake.
And one that is controlled by Satan?
Oh yeah, Satan's got them coming out of everywhere. They're in trains, in the field, in your tub, coming out of the fucking trees. They're everywhere.
Do they even have snakes in Alabama that can bite and kill you?
Oh, fuck if I know. I don't think I want to go down there to find out, just in case Alabama is the U.S. version of Australia. But you know what I do know, though?
What?
The Satan snake, the cobra, he just hangs back and watches as shit goes down.
Hey man, why get your hands dirty when you can make other snakes do it for you?
Yeah, old Satan snake is pretty sneaky.
Like a snake. I have a request for you when I die.
Well, I hope that you aren't planning to do that too soon.
I mean, you never know when a Satan snake will come and get ya.
That is absolutely fair.
But for real, when I die, please make the obituary read, "She died of an unknown ailment."
Got it. But, that's what they put if it's something that they don't really want to say, like drugs or booze or suicide, right?
Yes, but we all know it'll probably be a Satan snake.
Hey, okay, cool. I mean, not cool, but you know what I mean. Any other requests?
Yes. When my body is there on the slab, make sure that the coroner is eating chicken wing snacks and just all willy-nilly all over my lifeless corpse.
You are into some real freaky shit, nurse.
Yeah, you have no idea.
Ooh, you are one spooky chick.
The spookiest.
Now, we'll talk more about that later. But anyway, so basically the gist of this movie is something along the lines of Jaws. I suspect that's why they changed the title of the movie from King Cobra to Jaws of Satan. They wanted to cash in on that sweet, sweet Jaws money. Now, Utah is getting ready for a dog racing track. They are going to allow gambling, which could, I imagine, should create a cash windfall for the state. And I think the mayor or the governor or whatever is going to use that to launch a re-election campaign. Now, Christina Applegate's dad was part of the whole deal to help put the track deal together and stands to gain from this place opening up too. But these goddamn snakes.
Ugh, they ruin everything.
Yeah, everyone who has something to gain from this dog track opening and being a big old hive of scum and villainy definitely does not want to hear this shit about fucking snakes. In fact, They are so not wanting to hear about these snakes that the mayor is absolutely anti-working on the snake problem at all. That's maybe even worse than the guy from Jaws who just wants to downplay how many shark attacks happen in order for the beaches to remain open to the out-of-towners. Now, this mayor of Utah just doesn't want to do anything about the snakes. Father Tom is finding out that there's some sort of druid curse on his family. That's what led to this whole Satan snake issue. Basically, it's a part of that whole Irish thing about getting rid of snakes. The druids cursed the pharaohs, and so he knows that the Satan snake is specifically against him. Okay, cool. And he is able to successfully defend himself by realizing that the snake doesn't like crosses.
I mean, can you blame Satan Snake?
I mean, not at all. I mean, he is Satan Snake after all. Now, there are two other heroes out here trying to solve for this snake shit too. Father Tom doesn't have to necessarily take this on himself. First, we have Dr. Maggie Sheridan, played by Gretchen Corbett. She's seeing all these weird bites and how the toxins are messing up people pretty bad. And she's called in snake guide Dr. Paul Hendricks.
Hendricks is a dick when he first meets Maggie. He says Dr. Sheridan was going to meet him, but he assumes that he sent her instead. Dick.
Yeah, that's some casual sexism. But I find that not only shitty, but also kind of out of place. This movie, if it came out like 10 years earlier, then I could see that being something a guy would say. But in 1981, 1982, bro, we're way past ladies becoming doctors and shit. But I do want to talk about Gretchen Corbett. She has had an extensive career of her own, and she's definitely best known for her work on television. She did a ton of TV movies, but also guest starred on several awesome TV shows like Ironside, Columbo, Kojak, Wonder Woman, and more. She even appeared on an episode of my all-time favorite series, Cheers. And speaking of favorite TV shows, Corbett is best known for 33 episodes as Beth Davenport on The Rockford Files. She even appeared in a couple of the TV movies that came out after the series ended. Beth Davenport was one of James Garner's Jim Rockford's best friends and attorney, and it was even revealed at one point that Beth and Jim dated for a while prior to the start of the series, but she kind of thought that it was best for them to remain friends, with occasional benefits. Corbett recently appeared in the highly praised Nicolas Cage movie Pig, playing the character Mac. As for John Corks, who plays Hendricks, he got his start thanks to Alan Arkin. Arkin was directing a play and Corks got a part, and that was 1968. In 1970, he appeared in his first movie, Arthur Hiller's The Out-of-Towners, starring Jack Lemmon and based on a Neil Simon play. Then that same year, Corks worked with Alan Arkin again in Catch-22, and he worked relatively frequently through the next decade or so. And speaking of favorite TV shows, he appeared in a 1989 episode of Moonlighting as a character named Winston Guy. Nurse, I would like to have a cool name like that. Can you look into that for me?
Sure. Sure.
Thanks, you're a real doll, you know that? At least as of July 2018, Corks was teaching drama for the Stella Adler Studio of Acting and taught a masterclass in Rio down in Brazil. But for our purposes, he's still fucking around with snakes in Utah, Alabama. So, let's get to that thrilling conclusion of Jaws of Satan.
The church had that Illuminati-like symbol in that stained glass thingy. Are they behind the snake attacks? Did they call Satan Snake? I knew it!
Oh, come on now, Nurse. Don't tell me you're one of those conspiracy theorists now. I told you to stop fucking around on Facebook.
I'm just out here trying to find truth and fight a pretty evil group of people controlling the world that probably, definitely doesn't exist.
So anyway, if you know that a cave has a shitload of snakes inside, and your buddy went in there to potentially kill said snakes, and he hasn't returned, would you go in there too? I mean, is that a good... Wait a minute. Nurse, how do you think those snakes got Dr. Maggie onto that altar? You think that she got, like, carried over there? Or if so, how many snakes does it take to carry a full-grown human woman over to a stone altar, lift her up onto it, and then place her there for Satan Snake.
Hang on a second. Let me do the math. 7. Yeah, 7 snakes.
Well, I can't argue with that math. I have no basis to even try. Now, is it possible that Satan Snake, held a little gun up to her and told her to get on that altar or she'd get it? Or maybe Satan Snake had a couple of his snake buddies over by Hendrix and told her that if she didn't get on the altar, he'd have his buddies bite him. I really think that they should have shot one of those scenes.
It really could have helped this movie.
Yeah, this was a bit of a dud. There's a nugget of something interesting here. Demon-possessed snake, yes please, but never really feels like there's a snake invasion happening here. There's a movie called The Giant Spider Invasion from 1975. Now, without going down the whole rabbit hole of Black Hole bringing these alien spiders to Wisconsin, there were spiders all over the fucking place. It felt like a true spider invasion was going on. Not a perfect one, but it at least felt like the place was getting overrun. Here, there are, 9 snakes and a Satan snake for this whole county. I mean, only a few people died. Then the priest takes on the snake and then the end.
Yeah, he pretty much did what amounts to the magnifying glass light trick. Like, he came in, held up his cross, it reflected on Satan's snake.
And he lit that bitch up.
You at least have to appreciate how Alabama deals with snakes. Call animal control? Nope. Call the cops and let them bring in some shotguns to a snake party.
Yeah. I also like that the mayor gives Hendrix, Father Tom, and Maggie 18 hours to kill all the snakes. If they fail, they go to jail. But on what charges?
On the charge of preventing the opening of a dog racing track.
I mean, good call. I mean, that is a federal offense.
Was it really all that necessary for the mayor to hire that mugger to attack Maggie?
Yeah, that's a weird segment in the movie. I mean, she gets drive-by hit on, then he forces her off the road by playing chicken with her.
But she was in a car and he was only riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, then he tries carjacking her, and I think he also wants to rape her because of course, but then...
Satan Snake!
Yeah, Satan Snake is kind of the hero in this scene. Granted, he still tries going after Maggie and busts her window to try to get to her before she's able to finally drive off. Still, he did her a solid.
If I ever get carjacked, I hope Satan Snake comes and saves me.
I would hope so too. I mean, I love that Hendrix isn't buying a sentient snake is behind all this and says, it's a snake, a goddamn big snake. Now, there are a couple of goofs in this movie that I have to call out because they are pretty bad. First, at the big opening for the racetrack, our friendly sheriff is there helping out and celebrating and what have you. Pretty soon after that, we see the same sheriff driving Hendrix to the cave, and with him, when he finds the giant shedded skin of Satan Snake. The sheriff then says he has to go because he's needed at the track. Whoopsies. Second, and maybe the worst, is that Maggie goes to a phone booth to tell Father Tom that Hendrix has gone to the cave, and she's not heard from him in a while. But they didn't loop her dialogue in. We see her clearly talking but making no sound. On the other end, the priest is responding to her, so we at least get the gist, but they either needed to add her dialogue or cut her part of the visual side out of the movie. Double whoopsies.
Nobody's perfect.
I guess not. So why don't you give your final score? I think we all know where this is headed because, well, we all just watched Jaws of Satan together, but go for it, nurse.
Well, they can't all be winners, and that's definitely the case with Jaws of Satan. Not enough snakes. Not enough to do anything with a pretty interesting and bonkers idea of Satan-controlled snakes. Basically, a dull movie all around. Even though it wasn't boring at all, it's just bland. And where were all the crazy snake attacks? Don't get me wrong, I like being surprised by sudden snake attacks like we saw, but there needed to be like a dozen attacks like that, and we only got like maybe 6 total? It's, in my professional B-movie nursing opinion, that Jaws of Satan only gets 2 poops out of 5. A real disappointment, especially after you read this short synopsis on Wikipedia or IMDb.
Yep, it's truly disappointing. Jaws of Satan is just one of a whole shitload of snake movies. There are giant snake movies, motherfucking snakes on motherfucking planes, genetically enhanced snakes. That one Andy Sedaris movie in which there's a snake that ate a cancer-infested rats. I mean, Indiana Jones did stuff with snakes, I think. But my point is, Jaws of Satan was not one of those embarrassing situations in which people thought about making a snake movie, then this movie shit its pants so bad they had to throw those pants away, and everyone gave up on the idea of snake movies forever. Snake movies are one of the top creepy crawly things that people have fears of. So, yeah, snake movies weren't deterred by this pooper. And neither should you be about B-Movie Enema the series. Nurse?
What's up, Doc?
Well, 'twould appear that the snakes are happy with us covering one of their movies for once.
Well, that sounds like good news.
Yeah, well, I can't say I can complain too much. We talked about their stuff, they let us be. I still need to deal with that poop shoot business, but not every week will end up as nicely tied into a bow as this week.
I sure hope next week's movie will at least be a little better.
Oh, surely it will be. I mean, how bad can it be compared to... fucking snakes!